Hey everyone, welcome to this lunar eclipse sidereal astrology forecast for the lunar eclipse on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. All right, so very important lunar eclipse, well, very important full moon here, which is a lunar eclipse in this case, in the constellation of Aries. If you're expecting me to say Taurus just then, be sure to check out the link down below for more information. We are using the visible sky on this channel called True Sidereal Astrology, and it does change the signs from mainstream astrology. But yeah, if you look up at the eclipse, you will see it in the constellation of fiery Aries. So a time of doing a status check with our initiating side. Right, Aries the Ram is all about thrusting forward, taking that initiative, focusing on our needs, who we are, what we want, and pursuing that, getting that, taking that in many ways. So it's really about taking that initiative, that action, that assertive energy, and seeing how that's doing right now. Right, a lunar eclipse is very much like a full moon. Full moons are status check times. They're times of illumination, right? In this case, very spiritual illumination, where it's an eclipse, so it's very much in the internal world coming to the surface, and very much about our life path. Oftentimes, with this illumination of ourselves, in this case, our needs, who we are, what we want, will make important shifts to our life path. And so in this case, being a North Node eclipse is new beginnings, new steps in the right direction regarding what we can cultivate, regarding, again, that initiative, that action, and a bit of that fiery energy. Now, we'll be conjunct erratic Uranus, in fact, very closely conjunct. Uranus has been here the past at least few years collectively, and so there's been a lot of, wanting freedom, changes, individuality, revolution type of energy, with Uranus really on fire here in Aries. And so it is activating that. And so in our personal lives, how can we cultivate things that is true to our excitement, is true to our true self, right? What excites us, what gives us that sense of freedom and change and new energy, and listening to that. And this could be all creating more freedom in our life and positive changes so that our life is a greater reflection of that true self. All right, so there's this, as well as it's important to balance out that fiery energy with Libra, which is about balance, and there's oppositions as well, all about maintaining balance in this process. So let's go and take a look at all this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here is the chart for this lunar eclipse. So the lunar eclipse will be early on Tuesday, November 7th, November 8th, and this is around 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, depending on where you are in the world. That's Eastern time of the Americas. We are using topocentric here, which is taking into account not only the time zone, but also where geographically we are on Earth. And in this case, you will need to check to see exactly when it is. But for all intents and purposes, it will be the late Monday, early Tuesday time period, regardless of where you are in the world, but around that 07:30 Eastern time of the Americas time period, okay? So, and as you can see here, we are using the actual size of the constellations. You can see, for example, Virgo here is very large and Libra is very small. This is how they are visibly in the sky. And we are taking that into account. But in mainstream astrology, they stretch the constellations. And in Western mainstream, they don't even use the sky, they use the seasons. And so the signs will change greatly between systems. And so in this case, if you do look visibly at the sky, you will see the lunar eclipse in the constellation of Aries. But if you are new to this channel, definitely check out that link on True Sidereal Astrology down below for more detail. Okay, so lunar eclipse, it is a full moon energy. It is the halfway point of the lunar month, which started 2 weeks ago. It is a lunar month that is an eclipse month, even though the new moon we had was a very partial and non-visible solar eclipse. Still, astrologically, it's very important because, as you can see now, we are having this, what is a total lunar eclipse. This is a, for sure visible lunar eclipse, depending on where you are in the world, but certainly happening visibly in the sky. And so eclipses are all about changes to our life path. And this is seen by the North and South nodes. For those of you who've had readings, you know what the North and South node, how important they are. They are very much about our life path. And when we are in alignment to that path, then we really do find fulfillment, both spiritually and physically in life. And so these eclipses are great times, in this case with the lunar eclipse, to do status checks, right? This is like a full moon. It's an illumination. It's an awareness. It's the halfway status check of the cycle. And so what's illuminating here is the life path for all of us. Now, collectively, it's about how we can take some of this initiative, some of this fiery energy we're talking about with Aries, how to mix things up and listen to our excitement and our true self, which is Uranus, and maintaining balance with all this with Libra. So maintaining balance in our lives while, taking that initiative, and also in our relationships, as it's an important time to balance out our needs and others' needs during particularly this type of energy. But yeah, status check on that fiery side. And with this awareness, making shifts and changes. Now you can, of course, check to see exactly where this is in your chart, because it's going to be in different areas for everyone. For some, it's in career. For others, it's in home, relationships, whatever it might be. So you can check the birth chart calculator down below. If you don't know where Aries is, this part of Aries is in your own natal chart. But collectively, yes, it is about doing a status check with that fiery side. And through that initiative, or through that awareness, making shifts and changes with how we initiate things, right? With our goals, with who we are, what we want, how we can take action in our lives, right? So that's Aries the Ram, right? It is thrusting forward, right? It is, as you've seen, those rams butting heads, right? And very powerfully too. But it's all about that initiative, that action, that moving forward. That's what Aries symbolizes here. It is the first constellation of the Zodiac, which is about new beginnings. It's the part of the astrological or life cycle that's first about, the very first step of anything in life is to know self and to know what our needs are and to be self-aware as well, right? Self-awareness is the first step of anything and of life specifically. And so this is what it symbolizes, right? It is a fire sign, so it is that fiery energy. It is cardinal, so it is about directing energy, so it's about directing that fire. And so in this case, we could sum it up as that initiative. And so how is that side of ourself? How is this energy in our lives? How can we perhaps make some shifts and changes to cultivate it, right? And perhaps set things in a new beginning, a new path with the North Node being so associated with it, right? And being so close to Uranus, the planet of change and innovation and visionary energy. This is one of the gateways to our true self. I like to think of Uranus. Uranus is the gateway that's about listening to our excitement, all right, listening to the true self that is free, all right, that wants to do things because it excites us, and not for safety or security, but for that excitement, our true self, right? So being so close to Uranus, this is really activating what has been at least the past 3 years collectively of this Uranus energy in Aries, which has really been shaking things up collectively, creating a lot of that fire in terms of individuality and needs and independence and revolutionary energy. And so personally, it's the same thing, right? It's about, in this case, shifts and changes so that our life is more in alignment with our true self. So we do have more freedom, right? And this has, of course, been squaring up to Saturn. This was squaring up to Saturn, particularly last year. We had, for those of you who follow the channel, recall this, Saturn, which is about structures, has been squaring up to Uranus through last year. And this is all about finding that balance between structure and freedom, right? And so this week we will have these squares to Saturn. The lunar eclipse will be squaring up to Saturn. And so while there is these changes and freedom, and it is very much about that new energy and high frequency and changing energy, the square to Saturn is a reminder, of course, to still think about things in the long term, right? What is our long-term view, right? How can we still in the process, although cultivating our needs now, because Aries is about our short-term needs, our short-term goals, while doing that, also paying attention to the long-term view, right? Seeing the bigger picture and taking things one step at a time. This is the sea goat energy. Both Saturn and Capricorn here is all about that goat, checking to make sure that one foot is firmly placed on that rock before taking the next step on the mountain, to climb the mountain. Mountains take time to climb. and we have to take it one step at a time there. So very important there. And this is all very much, about earth energy. So while it's fire, while it's perhaps erratic, high frequency, again, challenging ourselves to cultivate the earth energy of patience, of discipline, of perseverance. And in this way, it can be an extremely constructive lunar eclipse. And this earth energy is also mirrored by the fact that Mars, the ruler of Aries. So if we ever want more information on any sign, we look at the ruler and see what it's doing. In this case, Mars is retrograde, going backwards, which has been symbolic of, since about October 30th, quite recently, re-examining our needs. While it's great to experiment, all retrogrades are a great time for experimentation, to try new things, to try things out, to approach things in a different way, right? It's great to do that, right? And see how things can be learned in that process, but nonetheless, to be active about it, right? To go out and cultivate some of those needs, do some of these things we want, set some of these goals, do all that, just with the willingness to adapt, the willingness to be flexible, because of course, what changes during a Mars retrograde is our needs, right? But we learn so much about who we are and what we want through experience, right? And so that, therefore, any retrograde is so important to be experiencing, just with that adaptability, as things often change during the retrograde. So while it is, again, a fiery time, this is also a reminder to cultivate the earth energy, because Mars is in Taurus, which is really about taking things one step at a time, slowing things down, stopping to smell the roses, right? And the retrograde is just really adding to that right now, right? Because it's going back, Mars is going backwards, visibly in the sky, all right? And so with all this, we speak about it as Aries, as Uranus, and it is very high frequency, a lot of changes, but there is also a lot of earth energy involved with it. At least it's good to cultivate it. It's nice to see Saturn trining Mars, though, as part of it, trining from Capricorn to Taurus. And this retrograde, the ruler of the lunar eclipse, or what's called the dispositor of the lunar eclipse, is retrograde, which is always very symbolic for, although it's good to incorporate this energy, this initiative, to rework, re-examine, reevaluate, go back, experience, experiment, And through this process, we're learning a lot about our needs. We're learning a lot about who we are. And their whole retrogrades all the way until January 13th. So there's a lot of time here for this experimenting and approaching things a bit differently when it comes to this fire and our needs and whatnot. Okay, now all of this going on here with the fire energies and any lunar eclipse or full moon is all about balance, right? Because it's always opposite. In this case, the moon is opposite the sun, but there's a lot of planets right next to the sun, Mercury and Venus, right? And so there's a lot of oppositions with this particular eclipse here. And so while Aries is about our needs, the balance point, the opposite energy, is about others' needs, which is Libra, right? And just in general, Aries being so impulsive as a general energy, Libra reminds us to stay balanced in general. And that although it is good to initiate and take action on things, is to maintain balance, right? And if there's any areas that are out of balance in our life, bringing those back into balance. And that really, when the time when things are most successful with initiative is when there is balance, right? And we have balance and composure. And we're, sticking to our principles as well. Libra is all about what's right, what's fair. That although there's that impulse to do the more instinctual needs thing, it's important to also maintain awareness of what's right, what's fair when it comes to relationships, how we relate with others. That's where it can be very much about others' needs and self-balance, right? Because Libra, we have the sun here. It's been, since last week, particularly the sun, Mercury, and Venus, which has been about focusing on bringing more balance into our life and perhaps some of these relating energies. What is fair? What is just? How can we cooperate with others? Come to mutual agreement. Perhaps there was some karmic energy, some karma that perhaps is maybe still being released, but was being released last week when we had these planets go over the South Node. South Node is the past life path, the path behind us. And so perhaps there was some releasing there with some of this. But still, it's still very close and still very much a part of it, that while it's great for that action, that initiative, to maintain balance, right? And still focus on what is right, not only for ourselves, but others, and just generally, and in relationships, what is fair, right? And all this. It's a lot of energy to balance that out with. And just generally with Mercury and Venus, you know, and the Sun, of course, opposite this, it's all about balance anyways, right? So good things to keep in mind, or just, you know, confirm if you're already feeling that fiery energy, but also there's some things going on in your life, perhaps involving relationships, or new energies involving one-on-one, or perhaps how you're relating with others. Again, there's certainly both going on, and both are equally important here. All right, everyone, so that is the lunar eclipse in a nutshell. Most important thing is a status check on that fiery side. How is that initiating side of ourselves? And through this illumination, learning more about who we are and what we want. That's still a process going on through into next year with Mars retrograde, okay? But this is a beautiful step in the right direction. It's a reminder to take things slowly and steadily, one step at a time, with the Earth and Saturn energy involved here, all right? With the squares to Saturn and Mars and Taurus, all right? But still listening, balancing that with listening to our true self. The ideas of, you know, structure and freedom can be harmonious. Naturally, they're very different things, right? Create structure doesn't necessarily create more freedom in our life. It's usually the opposite, but they can be implemented. And I think that's something we all learned a lot collectively last year, how we can maintain structure and also have freedom at the same time, right? And so this lunar eclipse is certainly activating that as well. And just all in all, while it is about listening to that true self, that excitement, that impulse, that initiative, and cultivating some of that, maintaining balance in general, making sure that while doing so, you know, generally the other areas of our life are in balance. And also when it comes to others, as others are almost always involved with our own goals and needs, that we are focused on what is fair, what is right, what is just, what is balanced in relationships. And in this way, it's a great way of working with this lunar eclipse. Very important shifts and changes to the year and along our life path specifically. All right, so everyone have a fantastic lunar eclipse. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click the like button if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're not yet signed up for MTZ Insiders, it is a free newsletter where you do get these videos released first before YouTube. There's a link to sign up down below if you haven't yet. But have a great one, everyone, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.